again and welcome along to this week's video. Now, I had initially planned to get out there to a lovely campsite up in the mountains with some rather nice waterfalls. Unfortunately, the site doesn't open until the 1st of April, so I'm penciling it in for another date in the diary. I've also encountered a more problematic setback. I'm always on the lookout for a freebie, and I was offered a diesel heater from a friend. I nipped round, picked it up, popped it behind the passenger seat of the car for the short journey home, and unfortunately I failed to notice it was leaking diesel. And so over the past week I've been smelling the fumes, which I initially blamed on the car. When the sunshine eventually came out, the weather improved for me to go and have a look for the leak. I discovered a large pool of diesel splashing around in the little storage cubby beneath the carpet. It's going to take time to clear this out, and as the diesel fumes don't make good bedfellows, I'm having to curtail trips until I've sorted it. The thing about these YouTube videos, especially made by people like me, is they're made in the real world, and these things happen and we just have to deal with them.
However, all this does give me the chance to use my new workspace and make a few improvements to the design of my camper. As I've pointed out in the past, I keep my vehicle pretty much as standard and switch it around for my camping trips. I didn't go down the line of a boot jump or going the whole hog and turning it into a full-time camper. That being so, it does do the job admirably. The only exception to this is the little sleeper cassette which I fashioned at the start, which sits quite happily behind the rear seats and is both useful and takes up very little space. The camper mode, if you like, has evolved over the past year or so. Initially I started by using the airbeds, the ones I've had for years from my tent camping adventures, until recently changing over to a folding Z-bed. Storage came from these absolutely ace storage boxes, which I have to say have been really fantastic. Unlike the cheapies you get from the pound shops, I think these are made from recycled plastic and are so heavy duty, easy to store and transport and even adaptable. I couldn't rate them any higher. However, having camped a lot over the winter months, I have noted a few areas where I might make some improvements.
So, using the cassette to cook out is fine in summer. However, it does have some serious drawbacks during winter. Standing out there in the cold, cooking just under the shelter of the door just isn't great. It can be hard to use the stove in driving wind and rain, and it lets all the heat out of the van. So, to coin a phrase from Blackadder's Baldric, I've come up with a cunning plan.
I'm going to replace my storage boxes with a kitchen. But with space at a premium, it can't take up much room in the van. It's got to be light, manoeuvrable and easy to store. Remember, when it's not in the van, it has to live somewhere else, and I don't have a big warehouse to store everything in. It also has to be multi-use, and I intend to use it outside the van on occasions, perhaps in an adjoining awning or a tent. Over the winter, I've kept my eye on the freebie pages in my local Facebook groups and managed to pick up a few things. I am going to continue with my very usable double burner, but I've picked up this metal sink for just a fiver. I think it was bought for a caravan. It's still like new and has come with all sorts of fittings. Now, I have to say my original plan did not include a kitchen sink. The majority of campsites provide washing up facilities, and generally speaking, you don't need one. However, this was so cheap, I couldn't resist it, and a lot of people who go off grid, and I've done it myself, but with a washing up bowl, and some people just wouldn't be without one. So I've included the kitchen sink. I aim to make the unit in two parts, one for the sink and one for the stove. They will clip together side by side in the van, but I will have the option of putting them back to back and possibly on short attachable legs when being used externally in the camping environment when more stability is required. I decided to make the sink unit first, and after taking a few measurements in the van, I grabbed a pencil and drew up a simple plan. I've reasoned that both units together should be no longer than 5 feet in length. That was based around the lengths of both the sink and the stove, and to leave me some storage space. I also didn't want it higher than the base of the windows. The depth of the units was dictated somewhat by the width of the sink. I would have preferred it a little narrower, but the sink was what it was. Something that is going to become quite evident shortly is that I'm no carpenter or joiner, and the construction methods and materials used were based really about what I could find in the kitchen drawer and other odds and sods within my shed. I did lash out though on a couple of sheets of 9mm ply. Strange thing about 9mm ply is it comes in 4 foot by 8 foot sheets. I drew the design onto the ply, and making good use of the suddenly fine weather, I cut the sheets to size outside on the picnic table, where I had more room to work. I reasoned I'd assemble it up later inside, when or if the weather wasn't so good. Although a bit on the small side, this saw was fine enough to make some quite neat cuts. Despite being a little cack-handed, as my old woodwork teacher used to describe people, you may be surprised to know that by the end of the process, I still had my full complement of fingers and thumbs and had no cuts or abrasions, though I will admit to the odd, extremely painful and almost life-threatening wooden splinter. I also managed not to break or saw through the picnic table. A passing neighbour laughed at my little saw, but size isn't everything. I even managed some quite intricate cuts, which included some cutouts for carrying handles, the hole for the sink basin, and even neater holes for the kitchen doors. With all the main parts now cut out and given a gentle sanding down, it was time for assembly. All were firmly screwed together using those wonderful brackets discovered somewhere at the back of the odds and sods drawer in the kitchen. I also gave a good line of something called Gorilla Glue, which is so good that due to a small droplet dribbled on my desk, I now have a permanent pencil that only a chisel will remove. We're coming now to the bit where I talk all things plumbing-ish. Plumbing-ish. This is going to be fun because I've got more bits and pieces scattered around my table than soft make. Now, first of all, water. Water comes in, water comes out. Now, you may wish to have some large containers outside your vehicle. To do that, you may be able to squeeze some pipes around the rubbers on your doors, or failing that, drill some holes into your vehicle to run out to some containers. Now, in my case, I'm going to fit them within the carcass, and there's two. This is number one. Yes, it was an old petrol can. Doesn't smell of petrol. We haven't used petrol in it for such a long time. We lost the lid. And I thought, well, spray it black. And this is for your dirty water. Now, when you see the photographs in a bit, you'll see that the sink drains perfectly well into this. It's a good idea, by the way, if your dirty water container is bigger than your fresh water container. I'll get rid of that. This is what my wife calls food grade plastic, and this is for my fresh water. Notice it's even come with its own little tap, which I am not using. This will supply water to my sink. Now then, shifting the water. Now you can buy yourself a little foot pump or a little hand pump. But there are other methods as well, the hand pumps and stuff. You sit there, you wonder what somebody's doing in the van. You could get a powerful pump like this. Yeah, this is 12 volt, 72 watts, and I can water my garden with this. I have used it on occasions, but this is for my greenhouse. Alternatively, and you find this in a lot of camper vans, I had a V-dub transporter, and this had the similar sort of pump. This is a 12 volt submersible pump, and this sits in your tank, and you flick the switch, and up comes the water through a little tube up to your sink. New on the market. Oh, I'll just show you this other thing. This came with the sink. It's not a water, wouldn't be a very big water supply as this. This is for your soap. And this, you will see this on the sink in a short while. And you are able to pump your hand lotion or your washing up liquid up there. I just thought I'd show you that because it's there. Now this is the thing that I've got. This charges up via a small USB there, and it lasts for about a week, if not longer. I've just never used it longer than a week. And this bolts onto the side of your sink, and this will suck up the water and spray it into your sink. Now you will notice it's got a tower on it. It's a monstrous great thing. So that bit's gone. And I've come up with another piece that will slot onto the sink, and this will sit into it. Then when I've folded the lid down, this just pops out and sits into the sink out of the way. So there you have it. You have your water supply and how to get it. And I just thought I'd do this bit first before we got any further. So here we are with the sink prepared and ready to install into the carcass. As you can see, no need to go looking for a rubber plug. It's already here, complete with its debris collecting basket. Turning it over, you can see I've not used a U-bend, as the wastewater drops straight down into the dirty water tank below. I don't intend to let the water stagnate and will be emptying it on a regular basis or before moving off. Here's that washing up dispenser, already fitted with a bottle screwed into the pump. It's not really my thing, but as it came with the sink, I thought I'd just incorporate it. Rather than use the massive stand that the tap came with, I've created my own fitting. I managed to find something that the tap just slides neatly onto. A rubber tube then drops from it into the freshwater tank below, and the whole lot just pulls off to store in the sink when I want the worktop down. Here we are back to the sink carcass. As you can see, using the ply has made it both strong and lightweight, and the cutouts on the sides make it very easy to handle. Both the wastewater tank and the clean freshwater tank sit comfortably side by side beneath the sink. I'll drop the sink in to show you. The thin rubber hose from the tap drops straight down and into the top of the white tank, whilst the black wastewater tank neck lines up with the pipe coming down from the plug. Obviously, it is much easier to line everything up when you're approaching it all from the front. When closing up the worktop or setting off on your travels, the soap dispenser just locks down out of the way, whilst the tap slips off to be stored within the sink itself. Let's have a look at it with the front on, just a dry run to see how well it all looks, and if everything functions together as planned. It's always a good idea to check these things out before screwing everything together. In this case, to see if you can both access and position the tanks in and out of the cupboards. It's going to be too late when it's all completed, screwed, glued, and been given a coat of paint. Thankfully, it all seems to line up, and I have just enough room and manoeuvring space to get both tanks in and out. Yes, I realise the term tanks are a bit grandiose for two 5-litre plastic bottles, but it sounds good to me. Just one last check with the lid or countertop to make sure it will close up neatly. It's such a relief to see things actually line up and your creations start to look the part. A cupboard with two big holes in the front just isn't quite going to cut the mustard. So here's the next stage. Because there will never be space within the van for wide swinging cupboard doors, I've had to make the doors to the water tanks in two parts, opening to the left and right, whilst I'm hoping I can get away with just one door on the smaller cupboard. The thin piece above the cupboards is a drop-down flap that will fold back out of the way when in the upright position. Neat, round wooden doorknobs shouldn't protrude into the van with any sharp edges that might catch the unwary, but I have no doubt I will find things hanging off them from time to time. I'm going to use piano hinges on both the countertops and the drop-down flap, and these folding stairs will come in very handy to hold everything open. I don't want them crashing down on either the sink or the stove. Well, I think I've reached a stage where I ought to stop and think before I go any further. Um, I've got the hinges and everything else, and it's ready for assembly, but I really need to paint it, and it's a lot easier to paint the inside, especially when you can take it apart. And the inside I'm going to paint white, but I've absolutely no idea whatsoever about the outside. It might even be varnish. I've been through all the tins of paint in my workshop, my other workshop, and I just can't make up my mind. So if you've got any suggestions, please don't forget we have the Facebook group, which has the messenger. You can message me on there or on YouTube itself. Give me your suggestions or indeed any suggestions you have for the channel. Right, in the next episode, hopefully, I'll have completed this section, the kitchen, and either be well on the way or will have completed the stove section and we'll be trying it all out again in the van, which would be great. I'm really looking forward to that. I am also looking forward to getting out on my trip up into the mountains above Llanbedr. I did mention it at the start of the video. There's a beautiful campsite up there that I want to show you with absolutely wonderful waterfalls. So hopefully we'll be out and up there. Just need a bit more of that weather we had. 2 days, that's all that matters. 2 days. Anyhow, right. The next video is out in 2 weeks' time, and I always put them out at 6 o'clock on the Friday night. So please, if you wouldn't mind, look out for it. If you haven't already, please subscribe or consider subscribing because that means so much. Share it among your friends. Um, like the videos if you wouldn't mind. Ring that little bell which gives you notifications when the next one is out. And of course, I've already mentioned the comments. So here we are at the end of the video. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you again in another couple of weeks. And bye for now.